Hey, what's up, guys? And this is just a little thing I'm trying. Something new, just tell me what you think and tell me if you want part 2, guys. I can do a lot more, so just sit back, relax, and yeah, tell me what you think. So let's just jump right into it.
In the quaint town of Riverton, where the streets were lined with charming cottages and the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, lived a man named Jack. Jack was a hardworking and kind-hearted soul, known for his unwavering optimism despite the modest life he led. He worked at the local factory, toiling long hours to make a living, but his heart always remained light. Jack's life took a delightful turn when he met Lacy. She was a radiant young woman with a smile that could light up the darkest room. Lacy was kind, compassionate, and shared Jack's appreciation for the simple joys in life. They met one sunny afternoon at the town's annual fair, where Jack, attempting to win a stuffed bear at a ring toss game, caught Lacy's eye with his determined yet playful spirit. Their connection was immediate and electric. They spent the day together, laughing and talking as if they had known each other forever. Jack was captivated by Lacy's warmth and beauty, while Lacy found herself drawn to Jack's genuine kindness and infectious positivity. By the end of the fair, Jack mustered the courage to ask Lacy out on a proper date, and to his delight, she agreed. As the weeks turned into months, Jack and Lacy's relationship blossomed. They spent countless evenings walking along the river, sharing dreams and secrets under the starlit sky. Jack did everything in his power to make Lacy happy. He would save up his earnings to take her to nice dinners, surprise her with small gifts, and always made sure she felt cherished and loved. However, despite Jack's unwavering dedication, Lacy began to feel the weight of their financial constraints. She dreamed of a life filled with luxury and comfort, one where she wouldn't have to worry about making ends meet. Though she loved Jack deeply, she couldn't help but yearn for more than their modest existence could offer. One day, while shopping for groceries, Lacy bumped into Mike. Mike was the epitome of success, tall, handsome, and impeccably dressed. He worked as a financial analyst at a prestigious firm in the city and exuded an air of confidence and sophistication. Their conversation was light and engaging, and Lacy found herself intrigued by Mike's charm and the stories of his lavish lifestyle. As the days passed, Lacy couldn't stop thinking about Mike. She knew that Jack loved her with all his heart and would do anything to make her happy, but the allure of a life with Mike, filled with the luxuries she had always dreamed of, became increasingly difficult to resist. Torn between her love for Jack and her desire for a better life, Lacy found herself standing at a crossroads, uncertain of which path to choose. Jack, oblivious to the turmoil in Lacy's heart, continued to shower her with love and affection. He remained hopeful that their love would overcome any obstacle, never imagining that the very foundation of their relationship was beginning to crack. As Lacy's thoughts drifted more and more towards Mike and the life he could offer, the future of her relationship with Jack hung in the balance. Jack's life in Riverton had always been predictable. His days were spent working diligently at the factory, while his evenings were filled with the warmth and comfort of Lacy's company. Yet, lately, an unsettling feeling had begun to gnaw at him. Lacy, once so vibrant and present, seemed distant and preoccupied. Her smile, which had always been so readily available, now appeared forced and fleeting. Jack noticed that Lacy had started to spend more time away from home. She often claimed she was running errands or visiting friends, but the hours stretched longer than usual, and her excuses grew vaguer. When Jack tried calling her, her phone was frequently turned off, or she would respond with curt, unconvincing messages. Despite his growing unease, Jack's love for Lacy made him push aside his doubts, convincing himself that she was simply busy or stressed. One evening, Jack prepared a special dinner for Lacy, hoping to recapture the intimacy they once shared. He set the table with their favorite dishes, lit candles, and waited eagerly for her to return. As the hours ticked by, Jack's anticipation turned to worry. When Lacy finally walked through the door, she seemed distracted and tired, offering little explanation for her absence. Jack tried to shake off his suspicions, focusing instead on making Lacy happy. But the nagging doubts refused to leave him. The changes in her behavior were becoming too pronounced to ignore. She would leave the house at odd hours, and there were nights when she didn't come home until late, her phone conveniently unreachable. Jack's heart ached with the fear that something was terribly wrong. One night, Jack was sitting in their living room, staring blankly at the television, when Lacy's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She had gone to take a shower, leaving her phone behind. Jack glanced at the screen and saw a message preview from someone named Mike. His heart pounded as he read the words. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." Jack's world seemed to shatter around him. His hands trembled as he picked up the phone, his eyes scanning the thread of messages between Lacy and Mike. Each message was a dagger to his heart, detailing their clandestine meetings and the passionate encounters they shared. Jack's vision blurred with tears, and he stood frozen in place, unable to comprehend the betrayal that lay before him. When Lacy emerged from the bathroom, she found Jack standing in the middle of the living room, clutching her phone, tears streaming down his face. The look of hurt and disbelief in his eyes struck her like a physical blow. She knew in that moment that there was no way to deny or explain away what he had discovered. "Jack, she began, her voice trembling. But Jack couldn't bear to hear her excuses. The love and trust he had placed in her were shattered, replaced by a deep aching emptiness. He turned away from her, his heart breaking with every step he took. "Why, Lacy?" he choked out, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you do this?" Lacy had no answer. The silence between them was deafening, filled with the weight of their broken dreams and shattered trust. And so, the foundation of Jack and Lacy's love crumbled, leaving Jack to grapple with the pain of betrayal and the heartache of lost love. As he stood there, tears in his eyes, he realized that the life he had worked so hard to build had been torn apart in an instant, and nothing would ever be the same again. The silence in the living room was unbearable. Jack stood there, tears streaming down his face, clutching Lacy's phone in his trembling hand. He could barely comprehend the messages he had just read, each word a knife twisting deeper into his heart. Lacy, seeing the devastation in his eyes, knew there was no turning back. But instead of guilt or remorse, a surge of anger and defensiveness welled up within her. She couldn't bear the shame, the weight of her betrayal laid bare before the man who had loved her unconditionally. Her frustration bubbled to the surface, and she lashed out. "Jack, you don't understand," she snapped, her voice sharp and cold. "I'm 26, you're 28, and our lives are going nowhere. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending that love is enough when it's not. I'm sick of being poor. I need more than this, more than what you can offer." Jack's tear-filled eyes widened with hurt and confusion. "Lacy, we can work through this. We can find a way." "No, Jack," Lacy interrupted, her tone resolute. "We can't. We're still young, and you can move on and find someone who's on your level. But I can't stay here, stuck in this life with you. I'm sorry, but it's over. Goodbye." With that, Lacy grabbed her bags and left, her footsteps echoing through the empty apartment. Jack stood there, stunned and heartbroken, watching the woman he loved walk out of his life. The door closed with a final, resounding thud, leaving Jack alone in the deafening silence. Days turned into a blur for Jack. The pain of betrayal and loss consumed him. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and the ache in his heart was a constant reminder of everything he had lost. Desperate to numb the pain, Jack turned to alcohol. He bought a bottle of rum and began to drink, drowning his sorrows in its bitter embrace. The days and nights melded into a haze of drunken stupor. Jack's apartment, once filled with warmth and laughter, became a prison of despair. Empty bottles littered the floor, and the man who had once been so full of life was now a shell of his former self. One particularly dark night, Jack stumbled out of his apartment, the bottle of rum still clutched in his hand. The world around him spun, and he could barely see through his tear-blurred vision. He wandered aimlessly through the town, his heart heavy with sorrow and his mind clouded by alcohol. He found himself on the main road, the headlights of passing cars blurring into streaks of light. The pain in his heart was unbearable, and in his drunken haze, he staggered into the street, lost in a fog of despair. The last thing Jack saw was the blinding headlights of an approaching car, and then everything went black. In that final moment, as darkness closed in, Jack's thoughts were a jumbled mess of regret, heartbreak, and the faint, flickering memory of a love that had once filled his life with joy. And then, silence. 5 years had passed since Lacy had left Riverton, never looking back. Lacy had severed all ties with the small town and its people, moving forward with her life, albeit into a future she had never anticipated. Her life with Mike had turned into a nightmare. The man who had once seemed like her ticket to a better life had become her prison warden. Mike, who had initially wooed her with charm and luxury, revealed his true nature as time went on. He didn't want children, didn't want a family, he wanted a trophy, a beautiful woman to flaunt and control. As his job grew more stressful and his career faced setbacks, his temper flared more frequently, and Lacy became the target of his frustrations. Each night, Lacy lay in bed, tears soaking her pillow as memories of Jack haunted her. She remembered his kindness, his unwavering love, and the simple happiness they had shared. But she knew she could never go back, not after what she had done. One day, Mike announced they were attending an important party. "You need to look stunning, Lacy," he said, his tone commanding. "My job depends on impressing this investor, and you need to be perfect." Lacy nodded, hiding her dread. She spent hours preparing, trying to perfect her appearance under Mike's critical gaze. She donned a beautiful dress, her makeup flawless, her hair cascading in elegant waves. As they left for the party, Lacy felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. The venue was grand, filled with the city's elite. Lacy stayed close to Mike, her smile a mask she wore to hide her misery. The room buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the clinking of glasses, but Lacy felt utterly alone. As the evening progressed, the moment Mike had been waiting for arrived. There he is, Mike said, his voice low with excitement. The investor. Come with me, Lacy. Lacy turned, following Mike's gaze. Her breath caught in her throat and the color drained from her face. Standing there, looking every bit the successful and confident man he had become, was Jack. Her Jack. Jack's eyes met Lacy's, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. The pain, the betrayal, and the years of separation all crashed down upon them in that single instant. Jack's expression shifted from surprise to a cold, unreadable mask. The years had hardened him, his once kind eyes now guarded and distant. Lacy, Jack said, his voice calm and measured, but Lacy could sense the storm of emotions beneath the surface. Mike, oblivious to the tension, extended his hand. Jack, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Mike, and this is my wife, Lacy. Jack's eyes never left Lacy's as he shook Mike's hand. The pleasure is mine, he replied, his tone polite but detached. I've heard a lot about you. As the night wore on, Lacy found herself unable to focus on anything but Jack. She could barely hear Mike's attempts to impress Jack, could hardly muster the energy to play the role Mike demanded of her. Her mind was a whirlwind of regret, guilt, and longing. Jack, for his part, remained composed. He listened to Mike's pitch, his responses curt and professional. But every so often, his gaze would flicker to Lacy, a mixture of pain and something darker in his eyes. The night drew to a close, and as the guests began to leave, Jack finally approached Lacy. Can we talk? He asked quietly. Lacy glanced nervously at Mike, who was busy speaking with another guest. She nodded, and Jack led her to a quiet corner of the room. Jack, she began, her voice trembling. But Jack held up a hand. Save it, Lacy. I don't need your apologies. What's done is done. Tears welled in Lacy's eyes. I didn't know what happened to you, she whispered. I thought you'd moved on. Jack's expression softened slightly, but the pain was still there. I did, in a way. But seeing you here, with him it brings back a lot of memories. Lacy swallowed hard. I made a mistake, Jack. I know that now. My life with Mike, it's not what I thought it would be. Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. We all make choices, Lacy. And we all have to live with them. As Jack walked away, Lacy felt a crushing weight on her chest. The man she had once loved, the man she had betrayed, had moved on. And she was left to face the consequences of her choices, trapped in a gilded cage of her own making. The chance for redemption or reconciliation slipped through her fingers, leaving her with nothing but the haunting memories of a love lost and the bitter reality of her present. The morning after the party was a torment for Lacy. The image of Jack's cold, distant eyes haunted her, and she couldn't shake the feeling of regret and longing that gripped her heart. She needed to know what had become of him, how he had transformed into the powerful and composed man she had seen at the party. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, Lacy began to dig for information about Jack. It didn't take long for her to learn that he was now working for a powerful and wealthy individual, and he had risen to a position of significant influence and affluence. The news only intensified her need to see him, to understand how he had turned his life around. Driven by her desperation, Lacy found herself outside the towering office building where Jack worked. She felt a wave of anxiety wash over her as she entered the sleek lobby, her heels clicking on the polished marble floor. Approaching the receptionist, she took a deep breath. I'm here to see Jack, she said, her voice wavering slightly. The receptionist gave her a polite, professional smile. Do you have an appointment? Lacy shook her head. No, but it's urgent. Please, can you let him know that Lacy is here to see him? After a brief phone call, the receptionist nodded and gestured for Lacy to wait. Minutes later, Jack appeared, looking as composed and authoritative as he had at the party. His expression was one of mild surprise, but there was an underlying tension in his eyes. Lacy, he greeted her coolly. What are you doing here? Tears welled up in Lacy's eyes as she took a step towards him. Jack, I need to talk to you. Please. Jack glanced around, then nodded curtly. I'm busy right now, but we can set a time to talk. Tomorrow evening, 7 p.m., at the Blue Orchid Cafe. Lacy nodded gratefully, her voice barely a whisper. Thank you, Jack. As she turned to leave, she missed the dark, calculating look that flickered in Jack's eyes. He watched her go, his mind already turning over the possibilities of their upcoming conversation. The following day was a whirlwind of nerves and preparation for Lacy. She spent hours getting ready, choosing her most beautiful dress, styling her hair, and perfecting her makeup. She didn't know exactly what she wanted from this meeting, but a part of her yearned for a chance to reconnect with Jack, to maybe even find a way back to him. At precisely 7 p.m., Lacy arrived at the Blue Orchid Cafe, her heart pounding in her chest. She spotted Jack sitting at a secluded table in the corner, looking impeccably sharp in a tailored suit. Taking a deep breath, she walked over and sat down across from him. Thank you for meeting me, she began, her voice trembling slightly. Jack regarded her with a neutral expression. What did you want to talk about, Lacy? Tears brimmed in her eyes as she searched for the right words. I needed to see you to understand what happened after I left. I heard about your success, and I needed to know. Jack's expression remained impassive. A lot has changed since you left, Lacy. I found a way to turn my life around. But why does it matter to you now? Lacy looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. Because I regret what I did. I realize now that I made a terrible mistake. My life with Mike it's not what I thought it would be. I miss you, Jack. I miss what we had. Jack leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing slightly. And what do you expect from me, Lacy? Do you think we can just go back to the way things were? Lacy's heart ached at the coldness in his voice. I don't know, Jack. I just know that I still care about you, and I want to make things right. For a moment, there was a silence between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. Jack finally leaned forward, his gaze piercing through her. We'll see, he said softly, a hint of something darker lurking in his tone. But understand this, Lacy. Things will never be the same. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. Lacy nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I understand. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk. As they left the cafe, Lacy's heart was filled with a mixture of hope and fear. She didn't see the malevolent glint in Jack's eyes as he watched her walk away, a plan forming in his mind. For Jack, this was more than a chance to reconnect, it was an opportunity to exact the revenge he had so long craved.